I've written a couple of books, but to see your words enacted, that's the biggest struggle I've ever had. You know, it was pretty amazing.
That's what's so gorgeous about the JUTE writing process and the structure, is that it gives writers such a really good insight into all the things they need to consider when they're writing something.
One of the great things about JUTE is the support given to new playwrights, people who've got a great idea and they just need a bit of development support to bring that play to fruition. I'm going to introduce you to two new playwrights, one of whom has just had her play produced and to great success, and another who was just about to go through that process. So it's a very warm welcome to Sue Chamberlain.
Hello.
And Dennis McIntosh. Hello.
How are you?
Very well. So we might start with you because your play, Queenslander,
yes,
has just had a great run with JUTE. It was quite a confronting play for many reasons, but I guess because it wasn't too far removed from reality. Tell us a bit about your thought process bringing Queenslander to the stage.
Well, I initially had an idea, and it was really about looking at politics through a domestic lens, so through a family. And in the progress of that idea, the first kind of iteration is probably nothing like what it is now. And one of the things when I was doing the program and working with Catherine and Sue was they said the original version was quite a domestic play, and that I needed to think about how to broaden that, and that's the scope of what I was doing, out to a greater issue or greater issues. And at that time, there was lots of things in the political landscape in Queensland that were coming to fruition or had been introduced, or so for example the anti-association laws, and there was, I think there was news clippings about the One Nation lobbying with the National Rifle Association or Gun Association in America, and I think there was Fraser Anning was at a protest with where there were participants doing Nazi salutes, and it for me it triggered an idea about what happens if an authoritarian government gets in, or what is the tipping point where a democracy starts getting lost. And then I guess it was watching how COVID was unfolding and all the social legislation and laws about that, and the anti-vaxxers, and then it was obviously looking at what happened in America with Trump in that insurrection. And so that's what interested me, and it was about how families were getting polarised, becoming polarised, and the political landscape was polarising, and at what point does that tip into something else that's not a democracy anymore. So, and obviously there was a lot to draw on with what was going on with Trump, yeah, and what he was doing, and so it was just, and those sort of, yeah, well that's really how it evolved, but that was a couple of years of, like several years of development really, of that idea. But once I'd kind of, and I think what it was once I'd sort of pushed it into a more futuristic, not now, but could be, that then allowed me a whole lot of kind of imagination and scope about what that might look like as a society. Yeah.
As the playwright, opening night, you're sitting there, theatre's full. What are your thoughts? I mean, how are you feeling at that point?
Well, it's very exciting, and it is really quite surreal to have people and I'd seen it a little bit in rehearsal, but not very much. And then on opening night, having all these characters who have now come to life, that's extraordinary. That's a terrific thing. And the whole process gave me a much more really great respect for theatre makers, and the work and the collaboration and the collaborative process that goes through into putting a work on. Like you could write it but even you can't even write it in isolation, really. You're always getting feedback, and that's what's so gorgeous about the JUTE writing process and the structure, is that it gives writers such a really good insight into all the things they need to consider when they're writing something, like really just complete logistical things, and that's invaluable. You can't learn that from that's not something you can kind of learn from a book, I don't think, but you can learn it from other theatre makers, of directors and dramaturgs and actors showing you and asking questions about things. Yeah.
Well, Dennis, you are the next cab off the rank, so to speak. Your play is going to production very soon. It's called I Is Maggie.
Yeah.
How are you feeling at the moment, as you know, all that work you've done writing this play is about to come to fruition? Well,
I feel pretty relaxed, really. When we did the creative development, we had a public reading. That was very moving to, sort of following on what Sue said, is to see your words come alive. I've written a couple of books, but to see your words enacted, it's the biggest struggle I've ever had. It was pretty amazing.
An addictive one?
Very addictive. And I loved it. And I've just about finished the final drafts. We've got a final reading, and that'll go to the director and the actors. And they'll probably want to have a tweak. One thing I found is that everybody wants their character to have a little bit more, and this or that. So sometimes you listen and you put things in, then you've got to go back and thin it all out. But through the process, I've got enormous confidence in the actors. In fact, we did a rehearsal of the reading, and I said, we're not ready. I went to Catherine Ash, the dramaturg, and said, look, we're not ready, cancel it. And she told me to go away. She said, they're actors. As soon as they've got an audience, they'll
be on.
Well, the audience came, and you wouldn't believe it. The rehearsal was a disaster. And the public reading was just brilliant.
Yeah.
And, really, I feel once I've got the writing done, it's over to them. And I don't think I've ever been involved in such a collaborative process. Well, I've published for major publishers, and they'll have a certain thing they want. So you write something, you might have to twist it a certain way or whatever, but this was very collaborative.
It's very personal for you, isn't it, this story? This essentially is your wife's
story. It's loosely based on my wife's story, as a working in an industrial laundry, a migrant women working in an industrial laundry. And I was writing something else, and she'd come home and she'd say to me, I'd sit down, she'd eat, she'd wait for me to eat, open your ear and listen. And then she'd not only tell me what went on, she'd act it out. Anyway, I'm telling people and I'm thinking, and all my background has been on industrial novels. I've got a PhD in all that sort of stuff. So I've done lots and lots of research on working class, and I've written about it. So I was able to bring very deep knowledge to this story, and I could see the ramifications and so on. And I ran into the JUTE crew. I got them to come down to a school I was working at.
Oh, okay.
And they said, why don't you come and try your hand at script writing as opposed to narrative writing? And I joined with Sue in Wright Sparks. And there was only 3 of us, so we got Catherine Ash to ourselves.
It was almost one-on-one.
It was. It was pretty.
We were very
lucky. Yeah. So we had this really, really enthusiastic, and Catherine was just very passionate, and she was great. And so we had her, and I walked in. I was going to do this other story, and then I said, "Oh no, I'll do it." And what I'll do, and she'd always say, "I Is Maggie," and I called it that, and that name has stuck and it works really well. So,
Well, without Right Sparks, can either of you imagine ever getting to this point of writing a play in the first place and then actually getting it produced?
I can certainly say mine would not have ended up produced. And it's partly because of the consistent and long-term support that I got from JUTE, and in particular from Sue Ellen and Catherine, just to keep going and each draft I thought it was finished, like even the first draft. So when I'd done the first draft, I thought, oh, that's it, I've written a play. And they said, well, not quite. And then, so they just kind of put enough, I guess it wasn't the sort of dangling of a production, but they would put enough kind of creative carrots in front of you, I guess, to just keep you going, oh, okay, that's an interesting thing to try and work out. Or, they'd say, what do you mean by that character, this? Or how are they going to move from there to there? And I remember, I think it was the first one, when Sue Ellen gave me some feedback, she said, look, terrific as a film, can't do any of that on stage, right? So that then, oh, okay, so what can you do? She said, you've got to push all that stuff into a single location. And that was sort of like, oh, okay. So, and that's really where, because I had them out at the lagoon and up at Copperload Dam, and so
it's a lot of work for the set designers.
So how do you get all that action to the audience on a stage with a Queenslander? So how do they get all that background drama and fill in? And that's really very challenging.
Yeah.
It's very challenging, but it's interesting. It's interesting to do, isn't it? All those struggles with kind of what goes on outside and how's that being portrayed or off stage or,
Yeah, I heard talk that, Queenslander, the set for Queenslander was one of the more challenging in terms of the set, but it was an amazing set.
Yeah, it was terrific.
It was fantastic. Yeah. As soon as you walked in there, you're like, here I am, Queenslander. How difficult is it as the writer of the play? It's like your baby, You've spent years working on it, honing it and rewriting it, and then just go, okay, there you go, hand it over. Is that a hard thing to do? Or is there a temptation to want to,
I haven't found it too hard, but I feel I've had a lot of creative control. Mm-hmm. But I'm very open. I've been through a process with Penguin twice. Yeah. And they're tough.
Yeah, I bet.
So it was a good apprenticeship, and I just think it's like as I said, it's an ongoing. It's been going on for a few years.
Right.
So I feel pretty comfortable with doing that. I haven't got this holding on. In fact, I want to let it go. I want to send it out there. It's almost the opposite. Yeah. I'm ready to let it go. And if you do your best, come what may, I feel I've got a lot of confidence in it. I've got a lot of confidence in the support that I've had and the direction it's going and the actors and the director. So, I'm ready to let it go.
Have you thought forward to how it's going to be? How, it's done. Opening night, you're there in the audience with Maggie.
I think that'll be a hard night because I've got all Maggie's daughters and granddaughter and sons coming because I want them to see the life that she's had. Yeah. I want them to honour her and I want them to be strong women. They are migrant women too, to realise that this is a country, you've got to stand up, you've got to go forward. Yeah. And I really want to, I want that, I really want that experience for them. So I'm very nervous about that, more so than the actual play. So yeah,
I'm sure it'll be all right on the night.
It'll be all right on the night, but it'll be a big night for the family.
Yeah,
I think it is a big night. It was a big night for my family, and I mean my children, and I've got grandchildren and everything, but my children were incredibly proud of me for pursuing something to the point where they're attending opening night with me. It was amazing, yeah.
Sue, having been through the process, do you have another play in you?
I do have I'd like to write a comedy because I think Queenslander was quite confronting content. So I'd really like, and I've got an idea, but I haven't. It's an idea, and I guess that's and I guess I have learned that realistically, once you start, if you start and you're pursuing it and all that sort of thing, it's a long haul to get it on a stage. But I mean, the amazing thing about JUTE is that's exactly what they do. They nurture these local writers to the point of production. And I guess there's some that don't make it, and you might have an idea that sounds great as an idea, but it won't work, or So
for any other aspiring playwrights, would you say to them, go to JUTE?
I would say absolutely go to JUTE, because it's such an interesting process. It's an incredibly interesting process, and it's a very supportive. And like Dennis was saying about letting your play go, I mean, once it went into the rehearsal, I actually felt ill, physically ill about it. And then once they were, the actors were getting direction from Sue Ellen and in the rehearsal room, and the set designers were there, and I'm sort of, I guess I wanted to keep control, but it was the recognition, this is totally out of control. This is out of my control completely now. There's somebody else, and of course you can't have a play without letting go of all that. So I think it has shown me, the whole process, which is, and Dennis will have that too, once he goes to opening night and sees it a few times, then there's all that sort of wrap up, or what do you want to do with it now? Because that's the other thing is looking actively at trying to find another outlet for it and all that sort of stuff. So it's a big process, yeah.
Definitely. Well, look, I thank you both very much for chatting with me today. Sue, I look forward to your comedy.
Thank you, you're welcome.
And Dennis, I'm really looking forward to seeing I's Maggie. That's Dennis McIntosh and Sue Chamberlain, both playwrights who've come through the Right Sparks program to create amazing theatre. Just another great thing JUTE does.